Hey guys, welcome to 1138, celebrating 50 years of Lucasfilm benefiting First Robotics. I am Erin Atwood, TI 3900. I am so excited to be joined today by the incredible Gordon Tarpley and Tom Spina. Yay!
Hello.
Jazz hands.
Thank you for the Muppet hands. Yeah, I always appreciate it.
Hands. All right. So for the next little while on the show today, we're going to be talking a little bit about special effects makeup. We're going to be talking about props, both in Star Wars, out of Star Wars, and what inspired these two guys to get into the industry that they are currently rocking like hard. So I am very familiar with both of your careers. I follow you on all of the social medias. I'm kind of obsessed just a little bit. But for people who may not be as familiar with you, just real quick, can you give me a brief breakdown of what your journey was like from being just a fan to where you are now, like the 2-minute elevator pitch? I can see Gordon's.
Oh gosh. Both Gordon and I are trying to figure out, like, how do we get that down into 2 minutes? I don't know. I feel like neither of us took like the quick path, right, Gordon? I mean,
I took the most random. Like I've ended up where I would have liked to have been when I was a little kid, but I never shot toward this purposely. Like I kind of just did things and just meandered my way over here. I thought about it the other day. I'm like, I have no idea. People are like, how do you get to do those things you do? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, if you follow my path, it's gonna suck. If you have this goal in mind, don't go the way I went. It's not that all the things I did were great and I learned so much good stuff, but I think not intending to get here and then kind of getting here anyway. All the weird things I learned in the process were from, I don't know, like working with composite materials to build things. I started with like fixing surfboards and like doing car repairs with my dad. And that's how I learned about Bondo and fiberglass and like, sanding body fillers and like stuff that I use all the time now. I learned so not in this industry. So yeah, random. But path-wise, I don't know. Tom, you go first. I'm gonna sit here and think about this.
Oh man. I'm a little like Gordon. Maybe I was a little more of a straight line, but it's still, there was a lot of meandering there. And I don't know, maybe Gordon and I just start with like even where we are, because maybe there are people who don't even know that. So for me, I have two companies. One is Regal Robot, that's on my shirt. And with Regal Robot, we have the license to do Star Wars, really cool, unusual decor and sculpture and life-size characters and busts and replicas and prop type things. And just basically all the stuff that get people like me and Gordon really excited all the time. And now we just get to like do that for a living. And that's pretty awesome. And then my other company, which I've been doing now for decades, I guess, is something where we do restoration of original movie props and make custom display bodies for original movie costumes, things that are worn in the films. And so like we'll work with the Lucasfilm archives and restore a whole bunch of stuff for them, or the Henson archives and restore a whole bunch of Muppet stuff from Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. And hello, kitty cat. One of my cats wants to be on the show. And then we also do all sorts of sculpture and monsters. And I guess my path to this from Star Wars is like, I was a very little kid. Star Wars came along. I was like, okay, this is like, whoever made this, that's what I want to do. Whoever made all those monsters in the cantina, like, that's the job I want. And my parents were like, you're 5, you can't have that job. And then I would like, so for years, it was just like, but that's what I want to do. And then they're like, but you're 18 and you really should have a responsible job. And I'm like, but, Star Wars monsters. And so, eventually, just by doing that stuff on my own, just learning how to make stuff because I just wanted to do it so badly, it put me sort of in the right place so that when these opportunities came up, like to do a Super Bowl commercial and to have my company recreate the Star Wars Cantina aliens for this Super Bowl spot, we were like just ready to go for that, and it was just this really cool, I don't know, it's like life just comes around full circle sometimes on you. And so, it starts with that. Then we get to start making some stuff for The Mandalorian. We've made stuff for Galaxy's Edge. We've done all these different commercials. Gordon's gotten to be in all kinds of costumes and things for us. I mean, it's like, the only way I can say it is like, you find what you wanted to do when you were 5, just try to do that every day of your life until you do it. It's a weird way to say it, but pretty much really, like that's the path.
That's kind of how it is. I sort of in the same boat. I wanted to do, my dad did like models and so forth when I was a kid. He worked for a company called Pratt & Whitney that makes aircraft engines, but he worked in their media department. And if they needed movies for press junkets and trade shows and promotional videos, he would do all of the special effects work. But this is like pre-computer stuff. So he'd build models, and it was like, legit building like special effects kind of things, like little pyrotechnics and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I got to watch my dad do that, and he got Cinefex magazine since I was like a kid. I think probably starting about 81. I'm guessing, like probably like very first episodes, or issues, I should say. We had every Cinefex magazine since I was a kid.
That's amazing.
And it was really, but about the time that I was graduating high school was about the time Jurassic Park was kind of coming out and movies were starting to go digital. And there was this big thing about like, oh, they're going to be doing everything in the computer now. And at the time, doing everything in the computer, you need like a $20,000 computer to do that kind of stuff. I couldn't afford that. I kind of didn't think chasing down the practical side was really super worthwhile at the time. And I was playing in a band, and I was like, I'm just going to go tour with my band all the time. And, I did that for a long time. Worked at restaurants and retail jobs and all kinds of random places. And then when I was in high school, I was like a terrible student. I just always wanted to do other things. And they gave me this basically like the fast track program where I could go graduate from high school, but they gave me a trade school. They sent me to this trade school. So they had graphic design classes there. So I took the graphic design classes. So it got me like into my first like real training doing like some computer stuff. I don't really use any of that at all to this day, but it got me my foot in the door with kind of understanding like Illustrator, Photoshop, and Quark Express and those kind of programs. And we spent the first year of that graphic design working on a desk, like drawing everything by hand before we got to get on computers. And when I started, Photoshop was version 2.5, so there was no layers yet or anything. It was like you make one thing from one image and drag it to another and get it just right because there's only one undo. So it's like, oh, it's wrong.
Yeah.
One undo.
Wait a minute. I was working in clay at the time. I had no undos.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like
smush it back down, right? In clay.
Yes.
Smush back down and start over.
I'm a painter and I did drawings, and so during like my last like year of high school and like a year after high school, I went to that trade school for like just like 2 years, and then when I stopped that, I was doing band stuff, so I didn't do any graphic design, none of that for a few years. Worked at restaurants, and then when I quit my band, I was like, okay, I should start doing some work, and I got a job at a newspaper. And then from that point, I was like, I'm not going to do any more work that's not somewhat creative. If I'm not doing layout work or something. A newspaper went out of business, and I got a job doing illustrations for T-shirts. I just drew pictures all day long. It was super fun. And then, I'd draw them and then bring them into Illustrator and vectorize them so they could, go on T-shirts and whatnot. But so that kind of got me into like that creative mindset. Like, you can't work anywhere that's not creative. And then comes along the costume stuff. And when I started the 3PO build, I think was around the time when things started to go, I realized a lot of the skills I was learning by putting that suit together applied really well, and people started to hire me to do random stuff. And then I kind of like snowballed, and it got to a point where I was doing a bunch of work with Tom. This is years later, and he's like, you should just quit your job. You'll get there's plenty to do, because I was doing architectural renderings for a long time. And I thought about it, but it's scary because I was getting, I didn't have to think about it. I could just be done with work at the end of the day, and it's a cheap thing. And then, can you guys see me okay?
Thought we lost you for a second.
It just glitched a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little pop. I said internet unstable, but my strength is great. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so yeah, Tom was like, you should go freelance, and I was like, it's too scary. And then I think probably 2 years of kind of like thinking about that. And then I got this random project making Legos from this guy I super admired, had one of the first YouTube channels called Backyard Effects. And I got an email from him and I was like, oh my gosh, this is Eric Beck from Backyard Effects. I watched, this was one of the first YouTube shows that was like a actual show back when YouTube was new. And he's like, hey, I'm doing these commercials for Lego. You want to like, somebody recommended that you help. So I went and did it, and it paid like in 17 days. I think I made more than I made in my work in a month. So I was like, okay, maybe Tom's right. I can probably, maybe if I can get like some random stuff like this, you know, once a month, once every 6 weeks or something, I'll be okay. And then I put in my notice like right after that, and I've been freelance ever since. And then Tom has given me a heap of work, and then Michael McMaster also gives me tons of stuff, and then like a lot of other random things come my way because of it. So yeah, now I just make stuff. It's fun.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that too. I should have never told you to quit. You know, just go back to architectural rendering.
Yeah,
that was. You know what? There are some people where you can just see it's like, this is like, you have such hustle. Like, here's the thing: anybody who's gonna go and do creative stuff for a living, you have to be able to be obsessed with the business side of it. You have to be able to be obsessed with the going out and finding work side of it. Because if you don't, you're just going to sit at home and wait for jobs to come to you, and that's just not how it works. And you know, I looked at Gordon and a few other guys that we knew at the time, and it was just, I mean, you know, Rich, yeah, like, you know, you just sit there and you go, you are so freaking talented. If you have even an ounce of hustle, which I know both of you had, like, you know, gallons of hustle, like, you're gonna have no trouble. Like, you're good. And never mind the fact that I knew we were overflowing with work, and I was just like, well, I'll just, like, if you get slow, I'll just send you stuff. Like, we have too much to do. But yeah, no, that's probably like two most proud things in my life was getting you and Rich Riley to go, like, you know, do cool stuff for a living.
Oh man, it was the first time Tom and I met in person. I think we talked online on and off like probably about 2 years. I think probably 2012. I started really like harassing the TFC Facebook page. I'm like, he had, you know, Tom put up like Photoshop contests and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to enter every single one. And I'm going to freaking win them. I don't care what it takes. If I have to do 50 entries. So he talked about the Cantina Super Bowl commercial. I have one of these like IG-88 canister things from that commercial still in my house. It was like one of the prizes for, I think, a Photoshop contest.
Dude, your entries were so good too. Like, we had no idea who you were at the time, you know? It was just like, dude, this guy's good. You know?
That's all I did. I was like a professional. I was a professional at Photoshop. So I'm like, I can make something good in Photoshop for sure.
So let's talk about that Super Bowl commercial really quickly. That you know, Tom, you mentioned that the cantina scene was kind of a spark moment for you when you were a kid watching Star Wars. You're like, oh. And then you got to realize that dream of like, I got to actually do this thing. So how did that come about? How did you get that phone call? What was that phone call like?
So it's funny. I mean, the Cantina totally is like that watershed moment for me. Before that, it was like King Kong and Wizard of Oz and Mighty Joe Young and, like, you know, anything stop motion. I was obsessed with all of that stuff. And like Star Wars comes out, and I actually, before I even got to see the movie in the theater, I had the storybook, and it's in a cabinet, literally like maybe 6 feet over there. I still have it. It's got my name scrawled in the cover like 10 times because I used to bring it to school, and I was like, I wanted to make sure, like, if I just had it once in there, someone might put their hand over it and be like, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, that's my book, you know, but it's like my name was all over this thing. And there's a 2-page spread of Cantina monsters. And that was it. You know, it was like you had a Muftak in there, you had the band in there, you had the 2 Duros goggle eye aliens, and they're both spookily looking at the camera. And I loved them, but I like was afraid of them. So, you know, like I'd be looking at them like that. And so I as I grew up, I would be remaking Star Wars in my basement, you know, or Return of the Jedi at one point. I remember, you know, making a giant Jabba the Hutt out of like couch foam and stuff, and making a cardboard Han Solo in carbonite, and like filming scenes with my friends in like 3rd and 4th grade. And everything was just an excuse to make stuff. And we would, whatever movie we were into, we would try and make props from it, or we would try and make costumes from it. Halloween was always, oh my God. And as high school comes along and junior high, I get Tom Savini's book, which is like the first real like how-to book of doing makeup effects. And I would be getting like, Fangoria and Gore Zone and all these other magazines with like gory makeups and things. And I was obsessed with learning about this stuff. Like, how are they making this stuff that looks so real? And along the way, I'm learning how to sculpt. I'm learning how to make molds. I'm learning how to do latex masks and foam and things like that. And Tom Savini's book was like a mind blower back then, because the only other stuff you had was like this, kind of like kiddie Dick Smith stuff. And Dick Smith's amazing, but his books were always really geared towards like kid projects, like kitchen table stuff. And Tom's was like the stuff that you would get kicked out of the kitchen for using it for. It's like,
you ruined the oven.
Don't let that Spina kid near the oven anymore. And when I finally got enough clay to make a full head, because I was just getting clay from KB Toys, like a couple dollars at a time. I would get like plastilina type, like kid clay, but it was an oil clay. And when I finally had enough to make a head, I made a Given mask. I had made a few other full heads before, but this is the first time where it actually all worked. I'd actually done the Arcona in high school, but the mold broke on me. I tried to do a 3-part mold for it, and somehow taking it apart, the mold just shattered, and I was very, very sad. But the Given was the first one where I got it to work, and I was like, okay, I'm going to teach myself how to sculpt, like for real, and I'm going to do it by making all these Cantina monsters, because there's all these different characters made by all different sculptors, and they're all amazing. And so, you start to learn, like, how do I sculpt in, more of a Rick Baker style? How do I sculpt more like Doug Beswick or Bottin or, Phil Tippett or whoever's, doing a particular character? And you just try and take on little things that you're seeing. Finally, some better references are coming out. The Chronicles book comes out. Now I have 2 pictures of almost every alien. That's two reference photos. Like, how can I go wrong? So now I'm starting to like do more of these aliens, and I built up a bunch of them. And now you flash forward a decade or so. I get a call in late 2011, in early December. I'm at lunch with Mike, who's working with me at the shop that day. And it's just so funny, because now there's like 17 to 20 of us at the shop every day, and we've taken over the 2 units around us, so we've more than doubled our space. And like, I think back to then, it was like me, Mike, and Pat most days, and Melissa. But we get this call. I'm on lunch, but I get like that little forwarded to my phone translation of the message, and it was like all garbled up. It was like, Star Wars Canteen, Steve, Sand, Sweet, Pablo, all ago, and I'm just seeing this, and I look at Mike, and I'm like, and it said Super Bowl, and I'm just like, I don't know exactly what this means, because it's all garbled, but we're going to go back to the shop, and we're going to call this person right now. It turned out they were working on this Cantina sequence for a Super Bowl spot, and they asked Lucasfilm to borrow the masks from the first Cantina. And so those are already 30 years old or whatever. They're obviously, even if they had them, they'd be too fragile, but the archives doesn't even have most of the Cantina stuff. So Pablo and Sansweet both said, who were luckily friends of mine, and knew of my work and everything, said, what you need is somebody like Tom Spina, who's already sculpted a bunch of these, and, have him do it, and they can make you all new stuff if you need it. So I called this up. They said, we shoot in about 5 weeks, I think it was. Can you give us, what can you do? We went back and forth. I got their budget. We figured out how many monsters they could do. They had a list of some they wanted. We suggested some other ones. We mixed a handful of stuff that I had sculpted previously that we made new castings of and finished up, along with some new stuff that we just totally fabricated for the shoot, 3 or 4 rubber pullover masks, the muffed hack costume, Hammerhead's body, all of this stuff, and pulled it together in 3 weeks, and then shipped it out to California, and then shipped us out to California. And a Dr. Revazan face appliance, which Rich Crucell made, that was amazing. Yeah. and yeah, just outstanding experience. It was a 3-day shoot. The first day was really just fit tests and stuff like that. And we got all the actors in, we tested all the masks, we made modifications so they all fit. Gordon knows all about this process. We figured out who had the strongest neck so they could play Hammerhead, which Gordon got to do in a commercial for us a few years later. And he actually got shorter from that head. It's very heavy, the head we have. And then, it was like this very, very long shoot. I want to say we got in at 4:30 in the morning because we had an early call for the Evazon makeup. We prepped all our masks and stuff like that the day before on the fit test. And then I guess shooting started around 8:30. And I think we wrapped at 2 in the morning. So it was just a really, really long day. And maybe we wrapped at 1 and we left at 2, whatever it was. It was like by the time we were done and we were putting things in the crate, we were just like, throw it in. It's good. Now it'll get back to New York fine, It's like, if it gets there, we restore stuff. We can fix it. Just throw it in the crate,
That is like one of the best things is when you can fix something, you're like, you don't feel as precious about stuff sometimes. And not in a bad way. It's kind of like with any of the droids, if I'm like, if I break it, I can make a new piece. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So yeah, that being able to fix stuff is nice.
Well, and it's weird for us because we're always handling the real stuff from the movies. And you have to be so careful with all of that. And it's always so fragile. And then it's like when it's something we've made, we're just like, yeah, there it is.
It'll be fine. And that's how they were that's how those people were with the film props back then too. They're just like, the finds in people's attics. They're like, I found this in a bag. We pulled it out of like the Dianoga, right? It was like in the bags from the shoot all the way 30 years, 35 years later, they find it. And it's like, here it is. It still smells like the freaking trash.
It smells like the trash compactor.
And I thought it smelled bad on the outside.
And then they call Tom and say, hey, can you restore this for me?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That is one of the ones we restored. Gordon worked on that. Casey too.
Yay. Yeah. That was a freaking cool one. That was so when the first time, like Tom and I feel like we clicked right away when we first hung out. Like the first time we were like in person, we're like, and we had a really fun time. And then Tom took me to his collector's house, saw some amazing stuff. And then I can't remember, it wasn't the same trip. It was the second trip, right? When you came out for the Rick Baker stuff. It was like, but real close. Yeah. It was like not like
it was months
like
away.
A month later or something. Yeah, it was pretty close. He's like, you got to come out to Prop Store and see all the Rick Baker auction stuff. And that was my first time. Like, I love movie props, but being from Florida, you just don't see the stuff ever. And so we went to Prop Store and Tom walked me all around the warehouse, showing me stuff. There's like items there from like Greystoke. There was this little baby monkey skeleton all made out of metal, and it was in Cinefex. And I remembered it as a kid, and I was like, it's right there. And it's one of these
such a good issue too. That Cinefex is so good.
Yeah. And it's like, stuff is like things that I have goosebumps right now, like legit goosebumps, because I was like, oh, this is so crazy. Like this things I've looked at in magazines when I was a kid are like, the thing is right here in front of me. But following Tom around, I literally have my hands behind my back, like, looking at stuff. Tom's just picking stuff up. Hey, check, like so you can handle
hands where I can see it, buddy.
Don't touch.
I've been there.
And now I feel like the same way. I go in and help, because I do a lot of work for Tom, for Tom Spina Designs out here. And it's got the same thing. You get desensitized to the fact of what it is. And sometimes it's like, I would be working on it, and I'm like, this thing is going to sell for like $80,000 when I'm done. And that's kind of crazy,
Yeah, like, I better not mess this up.
Yeah.
One shot at
and it's just, you get in the zone, and it's kind of,
that Baker trip was fun though. So we were hired by Rick Baker and Prop Store to restore a whole bunch of pieces for the auction that Rick did after he retired and closed up his big building. And I want to say it was over 50 pieces that we touched on. And it was like making mannequins for him, making displays for things, restoring things, conserving stuff. Like, it ran the gamut. And like, it really was. It was like, hey, you should come down and see this. And then it very quickly became, hey, you should stay and help us. You know?
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. I was like, hey, if you guys need any help, just let me know. And then Tom's like, yeah, I probably got something for you to do. And then the next day I came in, and my first prop that I ever worked on was one of those gremlin skeletons that was like from the melting gremlin scene. And it was just like, it was a pretty easy fix as far as, it was a good tester to make sure I wouldn't like destroy something. You know what I mean? And it was like a little ball of bones to like come loose, and it was like reconnect everything. And then it just, got more into like, okay, we're gonna patch some things, and
you're gonna seal this up. You're gonna put some clear coat on Mikey from from Men in Black.
So it's like it works in little steps, but it's it was a very fun experience. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
So in all the restoration work that you guys have done, you've touched on all sorts of different types of movies and different types of genres. Was there a moment where you're holding a prop that you've been tasked with cleaning and restoring and going, how, like, it's so deteriorated, how, like, where do you even start?
Yes. A lot. That happens more than you think. You know what? I mean, the best example of that, and Gordon knows this one very specifically, Max Rebo from Return of the Jedi was one of the only pieces from our work for the archives that we're allowed to talk about. And it was by far one of the most challenging things we've ever worked on. And it was a piece where we were working on, I don't know, 15 or 20 other pieces. I'd have to look up what the number is, but I mean, Gordon, like basically the archives took over our studio.
Yeah.
When that stuff came through, it was every table pretty much.
I went to work in New York at Tom's shop for that week, and the whole week Max Rebo it was in the crate still while I was the stuff was there long after I left because there was a lot to do. I was only a week, and I just wanted to see Max Rebo, so I was like, we got to open this before I leave, And I remember opening it, I was like, oh, ouch, this is okay, I'm gonna go now.
I kept not wanting, like, I looked at it at the archives, so I knew the condition. I looked at it when it came in just to make sure there was no issues with the travel on it. And then it was like I closed the crate up. Gordon came out, and Casey and Michelle and Todd, and we and the whole team inside in the studio at the time, Maria and Pat and Steve and Christine, everybody. And we just kind of started doing like okay, what do we know what do we know how to fix? Like, we can fix this, we can fix that. Gordon is absolutely in love with this. He can work on that, et cetera, et cetera. Wink. And we can't talk about that. But so the Max Rebo was one where, I had to come up with a way to do this. Like, I'm the one who developed all of our restoration techniques. I'm the one who was like, I would come up with how do we do this? And I would open the crate, and I would look at it, and I would like cry a little bit, and then I would just close the crate again. And I was just waiting for it to hit me. And it really was like weeks and weeks later where I was like, I started to get an inkling, and I remember talking to Phil Tippett about it, who, like, we were going to lunch, and we were walking to lunch from his studio with a few people. And I asked him about Max Rebo. I'm like, hey, I've got to fix up this Max Rebo. Like, what's underneath his skin? And his initial reaction was like, curse word, I don't know, 40 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh man, I just pissed off Phil Tippett. What am I going to do? And we go and we eat lunch, and kind of like me looking at Max and then not thinking about it for a while, on the way back from lunch, I just feel a hand on my shoulder, and it's Phil. And he's like, all right, so underneath it was Scott foam, and I carved that with scissors, and then we laid latex over it, and this part was foam latex. And he like laid it all out for me. And I was like, oh my God, this is outstanding. And so, like, armed with that, and then with just like letting it percolate for a long time, I was like, okay, we're going to skin Max Rebo. And we basically had to peel his skin off. We made a separate display for the mechanisms that were within. And we made a new form, because basically all of that Scott foam underneath turned to sticky goo, which happens to Scott foam. It's one of the things we run into with the Muppet stuff too. A lot of the Henson stuff is made with this. And it just crumbled into this black sticky dust. There's actually still black spots on our floor from where we cleaned him out. And so, like, we had to vacuum out and clean out Max Rebo so that he was just this deflated skin, and then make a form that was what Max Rebo looks like under his skin, which was really challenging. And Pat carved that all out of foam, and Steve Richter did stuff for the arms and worked out a thing for the head. And then with like the three of us, we kind of figured out how it went. And then, Maria and probably Steve to a degree, but probably more Maria and Melissa did a lot of patch and paint and things like that on him. But it's amazing because like he looked so poor, not well off, but everything was there. It was like there were some tears and things like that, but like we didn't have to do big patches. There wasn't a lot of recreation. It really was just like making a form that fit underneath it. Not an easy task. Like there's there's no way to do that. And the other thing is like we had to not ruin that skin once it was this deflated, fragile latex skin. Like it was a absolute nightmare, like one of the most challenging things we ever did, and it turned out great, thankfully.
Yeah.
Which is why I can tell the story. But it was that definitely is the one where it's like, yeah, how do I do this? But you get there.
It sounds almost like taxidermy in a way, where you have to remove everything
Yes.
and build up underneath. Yeah.
It was exactly that, and except you can't go to Van Dyke's and buy yourself like a Max Rebo form.
Yeah.
Like you have to make that up.
Little raccoon tongue.
Yeah, that's what we used on Cabe.
Yeah, really.
Cabe's tongue is a taxidermy raccoon tongue. We
God.
pulled a mold so we could make it in latex, but we needed a small tongue, and it was like we had no time when we were making that stuff for the shoot, and we had bought a box full of replica rubber taxidermy tongues and jaws years ago, because it was like on eBay for $50. I was like, I can make 20 werewolves out of this, and it came with a bunch of raccoon stuff, and I'm glad I didn't throw it away because we found a use for it.
Yeah.
That's a really fantastic story. Thank you for sharing that. So as difficult as a rebuild or a restoration as Max Rebo was, would you say that's like the pinnacle? Like, I'm so proud of this one, or is there another one that you can point at and go,
That's tough.
that right there?
I mean, if we're talking restoration, Muff Tack for my dear friends Bob and Kathy Burns. I mean, so it's Cantina. He's so cool and huggable and fuzzy.
Oh, am I losing internet here?
Gordon's frozen in the land.
Gordon is frozen, but we can hear you.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, fixing up that original Muff Tack costume, it was most special because it was for Bob and Kathy, who have just been super supportive to myself, to other artists dating all the way back to, Dennis Muren and Rick Baker and all these guys who used to help out on their Halloween shows in the 70s and stuff. And the two of them were so great to me. And when they were saying that Muff Tack was starting to tear and starting to get, real rotted in the inside and things like that, we were like, don't worry about it. We'll send someone to get it. We'll ship it to New York. We'll fix it all up. And so it was me and Christine and Melissa are probably the only human beings in the world who can say we shampooed Muff Tack. So we actually shampooed him twice, because he had a lot of years of like studio dust and then just dust on him. The coolest thing about Muff Tack though is on the back of him and there's like a canvas shirt underneath or whatever. And the shirt was soaked in rubber. And the back of the costume had in the fur a bunch of rubber, like latex. And I asked Rick Baker about it. I'm like, do you know why this has this rubber in it? Were they trying to do something? And he's like, oh no, I know what that's from. They were shooting with Entertainment Tonight or one of these shows at the shop, and someone put him up on top of the spray booth to just be in the background as like decoration. And so they wrap up the shoot, everybody goes home. He reaches up to pull Muff Tack down. Unbeknownst to him, they had put it on an unsealed bucket of latex, a 5-gallon bucket. And he dumped the bucket of latex on himself and Muff Tack. And he said that he managed to get most of it out of Muff Tack, but it took his leg hair with it when he went to get it off himself. So he never forgot that.
Oh gosh.
But this is stuff you discover working on these things,
The random people just talking to Rick Baker, no big deal.
Yeah, I don't mean to.
Right,
Like,
I love the lunch with Bill Tippett, not a big deal.
Right, yeah. It's so weird. Our life is so weird, Gordon. Like, I mean, there's so many times where we're working on things and one of us will just go like, oh wait, we can ask the guy who made it. Like, it's such a different time than when we were working on stuff in the 80s. And like, yeah, maybe I could write the guy a letter and wait 6 weeks and maybe he'll write me back, like,
oh, it's crazy. One of the times, I can't remember which time you were out here, and we went to dinner with Doug Beswick.
oh yeah.
And he was saying how he made, like, he was talking about doing stop motion for Terminator and how he like made the miniature in his mom's garage. And I was like, it's like the studio, like the Terminator, the original Terminator, stop motion is like he's in his mom's garage. I was like, that's amazing. So
he is one of the nicest people on the planet too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, and this is a lot of it. I think from us doing the restoration work and stuff. You have a different kind of connection with these people because you're like preserving their legacy, really, when we're dealing with this stuff. And it's definitely been a door opener I think for both of us. It's a really interesting way in, and like you go around Monsterpalooza and there's how many people that you could go up to, and I could say like, oh, I make rubber monster masks, and like, oh, that's cool. They're like, so does everybody here. But like when you go up to someone, you're like, oh man, I love your work. I restored the American Werewolf for Bob. And they're like, oh, you did that? I saw that. And like all of a sudden you have a real connection with someone because they know something you did and it was cool to them and they liked it. And so like, a lot of times, I don't know, Gordon has this, you have this great attitude of like,
thanks.
Like, yes, like you say yes to everything. I mean,
sometimes to my detriment, but yeah, I like doing it. I love it all. So it's like I'm like I want to do that too. Like I want to do that too. I wish there were more hours all the time.
Right. Well, you also get like you're fearless in such a good way. Like,
no, I'm scared of everything, but I just do it anyway. It's like I tell people this because I've surfed since I was 12 years old. I'm deathly afraid of sharks. I'm terrified of sharks. Like when I go paddle out, I'm just like, ugh. But I will surf anyway because I like the surfing part of it. So I think it falls into that same category. I'm totally scared all the time, but I just go and I'm just like this much more into doing the project than my fear, if that makes sense.
That's good. That makes sense.
So yeah, you give me something, I'll just go for it. I'm like, I will do it. The internet exists. I'll figure it out.
I've definitely heard you say the words like, well, somebody can do this, so why can't I? Like, I'm sure you've said like, there are people who do this, so I can do it. Like, like I can figure it out.
That was my grandfather my whole life. Like if he wanted to build something, he's like, somebody else does it, so why can't I do it too? And he always had like, this big workshop of just random stuff, and we would just go fish around in a shop. Like, you want to build a scroll saw today? I'm like, okay. And then we'd make he would have like electric motors and bearings, all the stuff you need. And, we'd build like an electric saw, like from scratch. It was crazy, and it's like stuff we would do at my grandpa's house.
It's funny. My grandfather was not as technical, but he was so cheap that like he was one of these like depression kids. So like he would use everything to within an inch of its life, and he never threw away anything. And like we always used to, there was like a section of this. They had built a bungalow upstate for the family to vacation to. And there was a section in the back that was literally built out of old doors that he must have gotten from like a junkyard or something cheap. And it was like he made a workshop on the back of the house out of doors. And it was just like, well, yeah, I could get these doors for free from the junkyard, or I could go buy wood. And it's like, and I could turn those doors into something, like that was just the thing. There was always random, like Little Rascals-esque, things made from, they used to call it Spina-ing something, like you spined it, and that's like Tarpleying is definitely like, that's a verb. Like people is like, are you going to Tarpley that?
But almost exact same. My grandfather worked for Pan Am, and he would always bring home crazy stuff from there. Like, I mean, our van, when I was growing up, we had this like kind of like a utility van that my dad had for doing film stuff or whatever. But we had put seats in the back so the kids could ride around, but they were first class airline seats from some old Pan Am airplane. That was like the seats in our van. because I'm like, my dad, says like my grandfather on my mom's side, but my dad like installed all the, the stuff in the floor and, the hardware. But we're talking about this shed. My grandfather built all these sheds out of this like 1/2 inch thick fiberglass, like 4x8 sheets that he got from Pan Am. This stuff is like $1,500 a piece. And
Right.
he's throwing it out, and it's insanely light and really, really strong. So he's like, "This stuff's great." And I probably have some around here somewhere. You like cut a bunch
That's
of
outstanding.
on, and he had sheds made out of that stuff. Same thing. It was like, I got it all for free. I'm going to build like a whole shed for all my lawn mowing equipment.
That's outstanding. I just had a weird memory. I remember my dad making us our first clubhouse as a kid out of pallets.
Yeah.
And we're like, but what happens if it rains? He's like, no, that's air conditioning. It's like all the holes in it. Like, all right. But that was the mentality. Like, I mean, what is making other than looking at something and saying that could be something else? And like, you are a great improviser. And I like to think I am, and I try and hire people in New York that are good improvisers. Like, to me, that's the ultimate talent for creativity. It's like, can you look at a pile of stuff and what can you make from it? And
I think
and
with the restoration stuff, that's so valuable, because you get things that it's like, it's messed up. The original material, you can't really recreate it properly. You got to make something that's going to sort of match it as best as possible, and then repaint it. And sometimes the paint is like 10 layers deep of weird overlapping airbrush stuff.
And you're only painting the repair.
Yeah,
so it's like,
a little patch this big with like stripes, like Gremlins, right? With the stripes, like faded different paints. And like, all right, this is going to be some niddly little stuff. But like that, just being able to figure out how to do it or how to mount something in some kind of creative way, I feel like is real important, for doing this. Being a little flexible in the brain. I think being like cheap and looking at stuff that way kind of helps, honestly. It's like, how can I save some money on this?
Yeah. And it really is like, I mean, I one of the things that I got known for like early RPF days was taking the elusive concept Yodas, the Mario Chiodo
one over here.
Oh, nice. And I would take those and I would fix them up. I would put new eyeballs in them. I would hand punch hair in it. I would redo the robe. I would give him different arms, fingernails, like all this different stuff, and like really plus up. But it's like I could look at it and go, it's a really good sculpt. Like, it's a natural looking Yoda sculpt. It doesn't look cartoony. It's like the body's kind of weird. The hands are in a weird place. The cane is, kind of sucks. The hair is dumb, but like I could do better hair and I could improve this. And like, just always thinking like, how can I make this better? And I think that goes for life. I think that goes for work. I think that goes for everything. Like, and if you constantly have this attitude of like, well, this thing looks pretty bad right now, but I'm sure we can do better with it. Like, I'm sure we can make it better. That takes you places. And Gordon has that in spades for sure.
Thanks.
I'm just here to make you feel good, man.
I love it.
This is becoming the brag about Gordon hour.
Well, with good reason.
How awesome is Gordon? So
guys.
So we're going to talk about how awesome you are for a couple minutes here, or 10. You have an amazing costume behind you right now, as anyone who has watched the Star Wars Jedi Temple Challenge will recognize AD3 behind you.
Yay.
And I don't know how many people know that you actually did all of the design for that they came to you and said, we want you, and you said, can I design it?
Yeah, so it was an interesting process, because they actually had a droid from one of the animated series that they wanted to replicate, but it wouldn't fit a person because of the way the arms were and stuff. And so I initially did a very modded version of that was wearable. And then they completely shifted gears. Like, we want a new droid that is like related to this droid. Can you hear sirens? I'm like, Tom Turner. Yeah, it's like, we want to do.
It got hot in here with all this droid talk. I gotta put a fan on.
It's like, we want a new droid that's related to the droid that we're looking at here. And I like very, very, very little directions. So I kind of used some of the cues off of the other droid. I did all these very, very different head concepts that were from like, it's very weird. I found like a bunch of Doug Chang art and some like one of the other concept artists had done all these different droids. I just didn't do their exact ones, but I did some like inspired by those. I did a whole, I don't know, real quick ZBrush things, like just blocked them in real fast, just to get some shapes. And it's like, okay, what shapes do you like? And they came down to like 2 that they liked. They wanted one that was almost like this, but it didn't have the little like Fu Manchu kind of thing. And then and they did, yeah. So I had a little bit of art direction from Killian. I can't remember his last name right now. It'll come to me, but really, really good art director. He gave me some like basic kind of things, like, okay, this is a little round, let's square off these edges or something. But I'd say like probably 85-90% of it was my design, which is pretty freaking cool. So that was a fun thing. And then I got to build it, and I got to perform it. So that was fun too.
Yeah, that's really good. And you said you
I like how, you know, months worth of work is just like, and then I got to build it. And then it just skips right over that.
Another thing for that show, I made all the lightsabers. So the kids, like the challenge lightsabers, there was 2 versions. There's like the light up version, which was based on those Savi sabers from Galaxy's Edge. They used the core. And so I basically designed that one first, knowing that there was going to be one that would break apart. And then I designed the challenge version, and they had like all these generic lightsaber kind of ideas, and they're like, just, you know, give me some ideas that look good to you. And I don't know, I gave them like 6 or 7, and they picked the one that I made. I had to make a couple mods to it to make it fit over the Savi's core, because the core itself is actually probably about as big around as a normal lightsaber. So you have to like make it bigger. And then it's 3D printed, and like the walls of it are like a millimeter thick, so that it's just is like fitted as possible. The trickiest part of that was getting the stupid thing to light up and have the switch that worked, because the Savi's core doesn't have any movable switches on the outside. It's a little like it works by magnets, and it's so incredibly sensitive that if it was like a fraction of a millimeter, the magnet was in the right place, it would not light up. So sometimes I'd get it, it would turn on, but yet if you bumped it, it would turn off. And I had to redo the switches dozens of times and just move the little magnet like back and forth. But yeah, that was exciting. And I did the kids' gauntlets too, those little stormtrooper bracers those kids wear. I did all those. Those are fun.
So what you're saying is they couldn't have done the show without you.
Right, exactly. I mean, if you watch the credits, it's all just Gordon's name.
Right. Yeah. Just
and Ahmed Best.
Another thing doing that show, they approached McMaster and myself. You know, they're like, we're going to do this game show, and we want some droids. So, you know, they hired McMaster to do LX, the R2, the R series droid, LXR5. I can't remember I always thought I called it LX. So he did that droid, and then I did my droid. I didn't really understand the scope of the show. Like, I didn't realize it was going to be as big, and they hadn't announced the host or anything yet. So I thought it was going to be like Star Wars show, like some little online, you know, thing. And when we get to the set, I was like, oh, this is like a legit, I mean, I had like multiple sound stages with these huge sets. And I was like, oh, the show, I guess today got two Telly Awards.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Really? That's
Ahmed
awesome.
posted that today. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So yeah, that was a fun experience. And it's cool with this droid is I had a 3D scan of myself done at a Frankie Polito's shop a couple years ago. I just had the scan. So when I designed it, it's like just fits me. It couldn't fit me any better. It's all.
No one else can be AD3. Only Gordon can ever,
That's right.
forever be.
Yeah, it's there's like maybe like 2 people I could think of that could fit in there like reasonably well. You know what I mean? And then even then, you probably still have to mod it. I mean,
I was just gonna say, let's hope their elbows in the same place. Otherwise, like, you know, it's like either the elbow or the suit is gonna break.
There was like some aspects to that suit that were like the neck was. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do the neck for it until like days before we were going to shoot. So I'm like stressing. I'm trying to foam fab stuff, and it's just nothing's working quite right. And then I was like, I'm going to try to print it and see what happens. And I just extracted off of my 3D model of myself, my neck in ZBrush. And then I just sculpted in the little details, and I printed it. And I like made it come up under my chin a little bit, you know? And then it opened back, and I made it out of PETG, so it's a little flexible, but you know, it's pretty stiff filament. and I popped it on, and it fit so perfectly that I was like, oh, this is amazing. Because I wish I'd done it like weeks earlier, you know what I mean? And it was like, I was like, okay, well, I printed like 3 extras because in case it broke trying to get it on my neck,
Yeah.
I had a couple standbys, but it held up through the whole, like, 10 episodes or whatever.
I remember how much you were stressing out about that neck before that. Like, because I mean, we talk, like I get in my car leaving work and it automatically calls Gordon. It's just like I get in the car, it's like, would you like me to call Gordon Tarpley?
I know the time. I'm like,
right, I guess so.
I have like an arc of like when I'm working on stuff. I'm like, I got to get to a point when I can talk right around like 3:15 my time. Tom will probably call right there. So like, I got to not be running the air compressor and then not
right.
like,
Yeah. No sanding, please.
No sanding. Yeah. You got to be
But yeah,
prepared for that.
I remember stressing out about that neck and like, going through different ideas. I don't know. I'm slightly claustrophobic as I get older. I wasn't as bad when I was a kid, but I'm really getting it. At one of the celebrations, I tried putting the 3PO helmet on in Gordon's room. And for starters, like there are certain people who just aren't built for a 3PO face. But I tried to squeeze that Jimmy Durante nose inside of there, and I got it on, and I realized like, you're breathing through a hole like this. And I'm like, all right, that's not too bad. And then I realized you're looking through these 2 little 1/4-inch round holes, and they don't align with your eyes perfectly. So you're like half seeing stuff. And I was just like, okay, I'm extremely uncomfortable and I'm never going to wear this. So here you go. Thank you. That was fun for a minute.
Thank you for the experience.
When I first started putting the 3PO together, the head I have now is super, super accurate. But the first one I had was good, but it's like multiple generations old. So every generation shrinks a little bit. And the first one I had was pretty small. Right. So I could get the head on. And it's like a whole thing because I'm not real claustrophobic, but it's enough. Like when you put it on, I had to kind of, okay, I'm going to get used to this. But then when you put the actual neck on with the thing, it's like this hard plastic piece that goes around, and then the head is on, and you get these moments of like, I don't know if I could swallow right now.
Exactly.
And it's
just like,
and it's really like a thing where I've been wearing that costume since I started the build in 2010. I think I really officially started wearing it about 2012, but I'd been put on a few times during like the year before and just get it worked out. And there's like the amount of like having to like keep my little weird skinny spaghetti arms and stuff to be able to fit in there. You realize it really quick, because if I gain 5 pounds, it's like I can wear it still, but it is not the same experience as if like right now I'm pretty light. It's pretty easy to put it on, but like if I'm up a little bit, it's the neck is tight, the chest is tight. You can't take a deep breath, so they're like, okay, we want you to walk from this point to this point, and you walk, and then you just can't breathe fast. You breathe in, and you talk about the little mouth hole. I actually inside the helmet, I like put my mouth around, the mouth kind of extends in, so I put my mouth around it like at a snorkel, and I just breathe out like that, so it keeps the hot air from like building up inside. So the whole time I'm in there, if I'm not talking, my mouth is like wrapped around the mouth hole, breathing in and out.
I wish you had told me this before I put that on my face.
I put my tongue all over that and everything. It's
right,
awesome.
Yeah. That's all right. You're vaccinated. It's fine.
It's safe. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm building your immune system.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, the droid stuff is fun. But I mean, honestly, like the stuff I learned in the process of putting together 3PO is crazy. Like the amount of just like, mold making, and my first ventures into 3D printing started with 3PO in 2011. I was doing architectural rendering, so I was doing 3D work, so I could actually model pretty well, like really well. Like that was a strong suit. So when people were making these, I could either get resin parts that were like, none of them were quite good, and then there was metal parts that looked nice, but none of those were quite right. And they were really expensive. And I was like, God, I'm like, I could I didn't have the money to have them custom machine kind of things for like a one-off, because machine shops just laugh at you. Like every machine shop I called, like, how many you getting done? I'm like, 2. Like, no, we do 300 or more. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to make a lot of something to get like any kind of reasonable price. So I was like, how many do this? And then, I've seen just about stuff about 3D printing, so I started calling around, and it was not where you could just have a 3D printer at your house. Wasn't real available at the time. And the ones that were like thousands of dollars. So a friend of mine introduced me to Shapeways, and they make these like nylon prints. There's parts on my 3PO to this day that are my Shapeways prints from when I first, got them done. But my whole venture into 3D printing started because of that droid. All the gold, I learned how to do all that gold paint. I learned a ton about doing different types of metal painting and painting techniques because of putting that stupid costume together. So it's
stupid costume.
Ridiculous.
We all have a stupid costume.
Some of us have
to hate.
a whole stable full of stupid costumes in case anyone needs to rent them.
Shorts, I learned about how to make them out of rubber, and
that's fun.
And these are those. So what's crazy is I sculpted these with had an initial base that I had like access to a vacuum formed copy that were many generations away from the original. So it kind of had like the landmarks from the right places, but the sides were super deep and I couldn't make sense of it. But we went out to install the Sandcrawler at Rancho Obi-Wan with McMaster, and Steve Sansweet has Forlom's shorts there, which are 3PO shorts. And I was like, this was right around the time I was working on that sculpt, like redoing those. And he took them out of the case, and I just got to spend like half an hour measuring everything and got all the reference. So when I sculpted them, it's like, of all the things I've sculpted, I think I'm the most proud of those because they look like dead on like the ones at Sansweet's place. But what's crazy is if you don't make them out of rubber, if they're not flexible, they don't fit in the legs right. So if you try to make them out of a harder material, they don't work. You have to
because then the legs are going to just be forced to be real stiff looking, dead straight no matter what.
And so when you see the Star Tours C-3PO that's standing there, they molded all that stuff off of the real suits. And recently, Prop Store had a set of the shorts come through from the Star Tours C-3PO. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I look at it, and they clearly molded it from one of those real pairs. But because it won't fit, they had to cut the sides and mod the whole thing in and taper it so that it would fit right. And they added these tabs and they screw together. There's a whole process to make them work as a fiberglass part as opposed to a urethane rubber flexible thing. Anyway, the stuff you learn.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
the more you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's these type of conversations that costumers and prop builders can have just for hours. There's little intricacies of like, you have to do this to make this fit because it's not supposed to fit. And we're forcing it to fit ourselves.
Oh yeah. In the mods they make in the costumes in the films, I mean, even with like the stormtroopers changed throughout the movies. 3PO changed a bunch between A New Hope and then the later films, and then the new films. He's totally different. He's like, they modded him beyond belief, and it's like it's weird because like part of my brain is like the legs on the new suit are amazing because they're so just work right, and on the old suit they're so janky and there's so much wrong. And like if you watch the Phantom Menace when TC-14 comes in and they break out the lightsabers, look at TC-14's knees. They just like they're just all awful, and I'm like, and you see the whole leg just come apart, all horrible. And that happens when you're wearing a 3PO suit. That happens all the time. Like if you turn wrong, the knee goes, and it like gets weird. And all of a sudden, it happened to me. We did the Hollywood Christmas parade, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden, leg like just skips over, and it's kind of like the little teeth kind of like get off kilter. And I'm like, and I'm like, okay, well I can hobble, the rest of the way. I'm about to
because now you can't bend your leg.
Waddling.
Yeah, the leg doesn't bend right. It's just not good. And I go to turn around. This is I was with William Miyamoto and Victor Franco and Victor R2, and William had Chopper. And I go to turn around to see if someone could give me a hand real quick because it's usually just like a boop, just pop it back. And I turn around, and right as I turn around, Chopper wipes out, hits a manhole cover under the red carpet at the Hollywood Christmas parade in front of all these people. And I was like, oh, okay, my leg is not a concern right now. I just want
we're gonna drive down,
make it to the checkout point, and it was funny because I was like, and I just turned around and keep going, and I could hear the crowd cheer. So I knew that he got Chopper going again because everybody went, woo. It's like, okay, he's safe. He's gonna make it. That was great. Always awesome when stuff goes wrong in public.
Right.
Right. And every 501st member has a story like that. You are singing our song right now.
Yeah.
So.
What's yours, Aaron?
Oh gosh. I was in a Thanksgiving parade in Ogden, Utah, and it always snows at this parade. And I was doing a choreographed lightsaber fight with a fellow member.
Oh.
And I had a backwards motion I had to make, and I hit a pile of slush, and just you almost could hear the whoop noise. In front of everybody watching the parade, I went whoop, legs in the air, butt on the ground, covered in road slush.
That's always good.
It was great. It was great. My sparring partner's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not okay."
That's just costume weathering. That's distressing right there.
Oh my
Happens
gosh.
all
Yeah.
the time.
Wet wool Jedi cloak.
Yeah.
Let's just put it at that.
Heavy.
Throw in the dryer. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, fits my Barbie doll now.
That's heavy, Doc. Why is everything so heavy in the future?
The nuclear fallout, of course.
That's right. That's such a good movie. We should be talking about Star Wars, though. I don't know what we're doing.
Well, any Lucasfilm stuff, but there's amazing, beautiful props from Back to the Future as well. I've got a whole Daytolf case of it over there. So
when I was
very
talking
nice.
about the
Very
$80,000
nice.
prop that I was working on, Back to the Future 2 Nike.
Oh gosh.
And I've done 5 of those shoes now, 2 pairs and an individual shoe.
And we've had a pair at our shop twice, the same pair.
Oh, that one is funny because that one, they had me come look at it before they sent it to New York, and I kind of took a bunch of photos for Tom, and they sent it out, and then they did the repair in Deer Park, and it was beautiful, and they sent it back, and some people want it. I think it was Ripley's Believe It or Not, one of those, and then the pair goes back again, just totally destroyed. I know that they tried to put the shoe on. And I would bet all the stuff in this room that they tried to put that shoe on, and we're like,
it's just so painful to see it. It was like, all that work.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
we'll
like
fix it again.
They're the most fragile shoes. I mean, apparently the Batman shoes are from the same time frame, right? Those old Batman Michael Keaton ones, or
yes, yeah. And the bottoms of the soles are just those old Jordan sneakers and stuff. Yeah, there's some sort of weird foam that they used on those shoes that just crumble. And oh man, yeah, we've had a few of the Batman suits through, and it's always like, it's like, did we get to the shoes yet? Like as you're unpacking it, and then it's just like a bag full of crumblies, and you're like, I found the shoes.
A Ziploc bag. You're like, there they are. Yeah.
All the props always come with a bag of pieces. It's just like killing us. Somebody send me something nice for once.
And I wouldn't send it to you if it was nice.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, for our younger viewers who are watching at home tonight, what words of advice could you offer them if they want to go on this same type of, if that's their goal, to get into prop building, model making, 3D building, restoration work? What advice can you give to them to get them on that right track? I mean, obviously, Gordon, you're a touring musician, you're working in all these different things.
Internet.
But if you were to offer a piece of advice to our younger viewers who have that interest, who are watching the movies and watching your careers going, man, I want to grow up and be like Tom Spina, how would they do that? What advice would you give to them?
Find what you want to do and do it to the best that you can with what's available to you. Don't try and make a 2-hour movie. Try and make a 30-second or 1-minute movie if you want to make movies. If you want to make props, make something that is within your grasp and grow from there. And, learn as much as you can. I mean, kids now have such a head start on this stuff. You can go on YouTube and learn just about anything. So, pick the stuff that really gets you excited, fail at it a whole bunch, and then, eventually get good at it, and just reach out to people that you admire their work and talk to them. Reach out to other people that you see that are struggling along the way and trying to learn as well. And build yourself a good base and network of friends and connections. and find kindred spirits, find your Gordon Tarpley, find someone your car can call on a daily basis. But find those people that inspire you, and if you're anywhere near places that do this stuff, so for me, I did my internship at the Henson Company and spent a season on Sesame Street when I was in college, and that made me drop out of college and start a puppet company and then go into television for a long time, and that really kicks me off on this path. So find companies doing stuff that you like and volunteer to internship there. To intern there, volunteer to work there. See if there's any position at all. Get yourself in the building, and just be around these people doing creative things for a living. And then you will soak all that up, and you'll be hopefully in the right place when opportunities come up. And just be ready. Be ready for when that chance comes, and jump on it when you can. So yeah, that's my advice.
Like Tarpley. Yeah.
And I'd say pretty much most of the same things. And I also think there's things that I think have been important to me are like just sharing what I do publicly, because of the amount of people the amount of weird projects that I've received from just people seeing what I do and then just contacting me. It'd be my first gig making any like costume kind of thing. I made a War Machine costume, and I just had put pictures on the internet, and then some guy hired me to make a Deus Ex Machina, no, sorry, not Machina, just Deus Ex, like the video game, like the with the what is it, the guy's name in the game? They did like a live action movie of that, which honestly, if I'd known the budget that he had for that, I would have charged more money, because but I didn't know. I'd never done anything like that. He contacted me and was like, "Can you make this?" I was like, "Sure." And I made the whole costume. It came out really good. So if you look up the live action Deus Ex, video game short film, and it's really, really well done. And I made the hero Adam Jensen costume for that. And that was the first thing, just because I posted somewhere, someone saw that I was doing a thing, and it's that sharing your work's really important. And as a person who's done creative work for a long time and been, like I said, all the way, it was in art classes all the way through high school, and then all my creative jobs, a thing that happens all the time is you get critiqued, and being able to take a critique and not be offended is super important, because on all kinds of fronts, like if you're making something for somebody and they don't like it, you want to adjust it. Obviously sometimes it sucks, like, oh damn, like I feel pretty good about this, but they don't like it for whatever reason. Another thing, if you're just doing creative things, you're making your own paintings or something, and you present it to somebody and they don't see what you're trying to put across, it's not their fault. It's, you know what I mean? And like, if they're like, you're trying to portray a sunrise and they see a sunset, like, and it's, no, it's a sunrise. Like, oh yeah, but I saw it as sunset. 5 other people see it as a sunset. You're like, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so if I'm trying to get a sunrise, what do I do? I'm like, okay, there's got to be like some dew on the grass, or like you got to figure out what it is, because it's, it's you're not expressing it properly, and it's okay. That's okay. Like, it's part of the learning process. And like, I think learning to take a critique about creative stuff was one of the biggest benefits to me in general, just being critiqued by my peers. And that goes along too with like sharing the work, putting my work on forums where people could take it apart. Hopefully they're not jerks about it, you know what I mean? But like, constructive criticism is good. Like, to take a thing you worked on really hard and be like, oh, it turns out it sucks and I got to change it. And it's funny because like in 2 years later, or even 6 months later, you look back at that thing and it's just awful. But at the time, you're super proud of it because it's like the best thing you've done up to that point.
Right.
And so when people take it apart, just to get in that mindset of just not being offended, and then decide whether you want to continue on with that, your whatever project, or do you want to move to something else and do it with improved knowledge, like scrap it and start over. That's another thing that I think has been very good for me, is being able to just stop a thing that I do. If I have some skill that I've worked really hard at learning, and all of a sudden a new thing comes along that's better, I just throw out the 10 years of work I put into this old skill. I'm like, screw it. I will never use that again. I will just now do this new thing. I don't care. And it's like, it's in my head, and there's certain aspects to learning that skill that are still apply to future projects or whatever. But that just, being able to just get rid of like the old info or move forward has helped me a lot as far as just trying to be sort of innovative in the way that I put things together, maybe. As far as using like 3D printing and possible, that kind of thing's been helpful to me. And I just say that because if somebody's like coming up and they're looking at YouTube videos, I'm like, this is how you do this thing. That's a way to do that thing. So look at it and think about like, this is really great. You see someone's talented, they're very good at doing the thing their way. Take all those skills and then don't be scared to modify them. If you see a better way to do it based on what they're doing, or maybe even see the flaws in what they're doing and you come up with something different, don't be scared to meander down that path and check it out. And don't be scared to fail. I mess stuff up constantly when I'm doing my own projects. And I don't get all bummed and I can't do this anymore. I have people write me like weekly that are like, I give up. I can't do this. What are you talking about? Just start over. I did a video recently on my YouTube channel, boxes and boxes of 3D printed crap that I was like, none of this stuff was good. Here's all the things I modeled and then printed it, and then I realized it sucked. And then it's like, I've got boxes of stuff, and I'm like, it's like, I feel like I should make like droid junkyard pieces or something. Boxes. I never was like, oh man, I just give up. I can't give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to change it and do it again. Like, don't feel discouraged, and just use this learning fail that I have is like a thing I learned not to do, So that's helpful.
Everyone
stuff Tom said too
in the box.
Yeah. Network like crazy. I'm like, one of the things I'm working on for Tom right now, I've done 6 versions of the damn thing, and it's like not one of them is quite right. And I'm gonna get this. If it freaking kills me, I'll figure out how to make this dumb thing work. I'm like, do I fix one of these that I've done, or can I just get one that's right? Oh, it is but it's the same. But in my head, I'm just like, okay, well, I will try a different thing this time, and then we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it'll be better. That's how it goes sometimes.
That's how it goes. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the wonderful stories you've shared. For our viewers who want to find out more, where can they find you online? I know, Gordon, you've got a wonderful YouTube channel. Where else can we find you?
Instagram, TikTok, if you want to see the most stupid things ever. But everything is just Gordon Tarpley, GORDONTARPLEY, no spaces. That's pretty much my internet handle on everything. So and it's the things I post on different platforms are kind of reflect different aspects of what I do. So stuff I post on YouTube is kind of like show and tell. Like I'll do something and I'm like, I should talk about this. And then Instagram is kind of, I guess it's shifted more toward like makeup and sometimes like projects I get to do, like my beauty makeup. So I look fancy and I like monster makeups, creatures and stuff. And then TikTok is just stupid, but for some reason I have a big following there, and it's also just monsters. Any video clip of me doing monster stuff, don't go there. It's bad.
That's where you want to go if you want to see
hundreds of thousands of people can't be wrong.
Yeah, right. And then,
so for me, if you go to
1.3 million people can't be wrong.
Oh my God.
So yeah, my TikTok is out of control, and I don't know why. It's so dumb. Yeah. I'm not proud of anything that's on there. That's what's sad about it.
But that seems right somehow. Like that feels correct.
I'm proud of the stuff on my Instagram the most. I think when I post up there, I like those things, but TikTok is so dumb, and it is what it is, I guess. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. People looking for me, you can go to regalrobot.com or tomspinadesigns.com. And if you're looking for like the restoration work and our sculpture work and our monsters, you can go to that's the Tom Spina Design site. If you want our licensed Star Wars stuff that you can buy, whether those are realistic creatures or the decor and all that cool furniture stuff, That's regalrobot.com. And then we're just at Regal Robot or at Tom Spina Designs. And that's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. We don't do dumb stuff on TikTok yet, but who knows, maybe.
Every time Gordon will get you on there.
That's right. Yeah. I'll just go in. I'll be like, hey, I know Gordon Tarpley. You know who I am.
You know who I am.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Don't you
All right.
know?
Well, I know who you guys are. Thank you so much for sharing your stories today. As a reminder, we are raising money today for the benefit to benefit First Robotics. It's amazing STEM charity. Hit the link below. Toss a couple bucks this way to the kids. Again, this is 1138 celebrating 50 years of Lucasfilm. TI 3900 signing off. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
And